Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahabashai, Ba'ashem Kakadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone for teaching us his truth. Salutations to the sincere Akim and Aquat that may listen. May the blessing of election be upon your house. My name is Brother Okwai. I'm back in here with another quick and hopefully Yahweh Ratazan edifying lesson. And for today's lesson is going to be the importance of elders and King Saul's. When I'm going to go through one of the transgressions that King Saul had done, right? So even though he wasn't like other kings that I've covered in other previous videos like Hezekiah or David and so on and so forth, it's still going through a lot of his walk and his rulership. We can still extrapolate and actually learn from his blunders, right? There's a saying in the world that people always say, a wise man learns from another person's mistakes, right? So as a matter of fact, let me open up with this precept actually. Okay, this is Romans chapter 15, verse 4, and it reads, "For whatsoever things were written before time were written for our learning, that we, through patience and comfort of the scriptures, might have hope," right? So, it's through the things that have happened and the accounts of our forefathers that have happened before time. This is for our development, our learning, and hopefully Yahweh Ratazah that, that we get saved throughout the midst of the judgment that the Lord is bringing upon Babylon the Great, So anyways, what I want to do is go through the chapter of First Samuel, and I'm just going to read it in the NLT. I want to interject, make a couple points, and as always, Yahweh Ratazah, hopefully this video will be edifying, right? So this is First Samuel chapter 28, verse 1, and the title is Saul Consults a Medium, right? And I want to read it in NLT, so just bear with me. And it reads, "About that time, the Philistines mustered their armies for another war with Israel. King Achish told David, You and your men will be expected to join me in battle," right? And for those who don't know, King Achish was the king of Gath, right? So, David was doing some work in the last chapter. I believe it was in the previous chapter for the Philistine king, right? And the king of Gath at the time, King Achish, right here, he was very fond of David, right? He was very pleased with his work ethic, essentially, right? So he decided to keep him on, right? So and it reads the following: "And you and your men would be expected to join me in battle." Verse 2, "Very well," David agreed. And now you will see for yourself what we can do." Then Achish told David, "I will make you my personal bodyguard for life." Verse 3, "Meanwhile, Samuel had died, right? And Israel had mourned for him. He was buried in Ramah, his hometown. And Saul had banned from all Israel all mediums and those who consult with spirits of the dead," right? So this is those things that Saul had done, previously, right? So this is actually a very key point that I wanted to draw upon. And previously, actually, what inspired this lesson was a quick conversation I was having with my manager at workplace, because we were talking about certain things and the importance of elders. Actually, it was a topic that came up because he's up in age, in his mid 60s, and it's very interesting as a nation of people because we've been so cut off from our power and our heritage that as men and women progress in different stages of life, they don't actually have elders for that, to go to for that guidance, right? And and this is something that I've noticed in other books and all throughout the scriptures too. Even the king would have the prophet. For example, like Hezekiah, had Isaiah, as like his counsel essentially, right? And that would give him some inside scoop. That would give him some guidance on how to actually operate and actually how to move forward, as a nation, right? And that was one of the things that we briefly discussed, because even today, because we don't have those we don't have those elders, we don't have that guidance, and essentially what we don't have is the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai resting upon the entire nation of Israel, because we've gone so far away from the Lord, we've become a bunch of degenerates, right? As a matter of fact, let's get Jeremiah. Okay, this is Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 21, and it reads, "Yet I have planted thee a noble vine, holy and right seed. How then art thou turned into a degenerate plant of a strange vine unto me?" Right? So, we've become a strange vine, by, mixing and mingling amongst the heathen, taking on their customs, and we have on their garments, and we celebrate Christmas and Easter and all these pagan traditions, and that's nothing to do with the Lord and nothing to do with our actual customs, right? So hopefully, this is all adding up and making sense, right? So just to go to show the importance of actually having elders, in terms of reaching out for that guidance, right? And this is what Saul, in this present moment, in this chapter, was missing, because Samuel died and he started waxing worse and worse, right? So verse 4, I'll continue, and it says, "The Philistines set up their camp at Shunem, and Saul gathered all the army of Israel and camped at Gilboa. When Saul saw the vast Philistine army, he became frantic with fear," right? So he started freaking out, in the midst of battle, right? And the scriptures say that wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times, because and it just goes to show that in this present time he didn't have that spirit of the Lord resting upon him, right? And there's another scripture in Timothy that talks about we don't have the spirit of fear, but of power and a sound mind. So his mind was not sound at all. His mind was cloudy, it was dark, and it's scriptures say that gross darkness to people, right? And as a matter of fact, keep Salakia brothers, a couple more precepts are coming to my mind as I'm reading. This is Proverbs chapter 21, verse 16, and it reads, "And the man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead," right? So, the spirit of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai wasn't dwelling in Saul anymore, because he continued to wax worse and worse, and as the iniquities began to pile up, the spirit was just not in him anymore, right? Let's continue. And it says, he asked the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, what he should do, but the Lord refused to answer him, either by dreams or by sacred lots or by the prophets, right? So he, I think there was a chapter before where he had slain some of the priests. He had, he was just going all left, right, and center, right? Verse 7. It reads, Saul then said to his advisors, "Find a woman who is a medium, so I can go and ask her what to do." His advisors replied, there is a medium in Endor, right? So a medium is somebody like like a familiar spirit, like somebody who kind of consults with the dead and tries to talk to spirits, right, and so on and so forth, right? And that is something that we're not supposed to do, right? I'll get the law on that in a sec. Or just read this next verse, and it reads, verse 8. So Saul disguised himself wearing ordinary clothing instead of his royal robes. Then he went to the woman's home at night, accompanied by 2 of his men, and I have to talk to a man who has died, he said. Who will you call up his spirit for me? And verse 9, he says, are you trying to get me killed? The woman demanded. You know that King Saul, you know that Saul has outlawed all the mediums and all the consult and spirits of the dead. Why are you setting a trap for me? But Saul took an oath in the name of the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, and promised that as surely as the Lord lives, nothing bad will happen to you for doing this. Finally, the woman said, well, whose spirit do you want me to call up? It says, call up Samuel, he said. So, just from previously reading that Samuel had died, right? When the woman saw Samuel, she screamed, you've deceived me. You are Saul, right? So now she figured out that this was Saul, right? So don't be afraid, the king told her. What do you see? I see a god coming up out of the earth, she said. What does he look like? Saul asked. He is an old man wrapped in a robe, she replied. Saul realized it was Samuel and fell to the ground before him. Why have you disturbed me by calling me back? Samuel asked Saul. Because I am in deep trouble, Saul replied. The Philistines are at war with me, and the Most High Yahweh has left me and won't reply by my prophets or dreams. So I have called you to tell me what to do, right? So, he was missing that elder, that advisor, that prophet, to actually give him that counsel on, how to conduct, how to move about, how to actually do certain things, right? This goes to show the importance of the prophets and show the importance of having elders, right? And it's a nation where we've missed that. Our elders, because of in different captivities and so on and so forth, and being amongst in Babylon, we don't have those older generational heads in our circle, right? We don't have those. All we have now is the prophets, and 2/3 of our people don't want to hearken to the prophets, right? Okay, so let's get the law 1 second, just to prove that early point I made. To 18. Okay, this is as a matter of fact, let me get Leviticus. Okay, this is Leviticus chapter 19, verse 31, and it reads, regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards to be defiled by them. I am the Lord your power, right? So we're not supposed to be, consulting after these familiar spirits. A good example of that is, especially in the city, like in Toronto, for example, there is a lot of people who, they use the different stones, and they're very they're dressed up in all this like mystical, quote unquote mystical clothing, and they're like, they do all the palm reading and stuff like that, like all these different enchantments, right? So people like that, essentially, right? And this is the kind of person that Saul went to consult with, even though he outlawed it, right? This is something that the Lord has considered an abomination, right? Let's get James in regards to Saul's predicament. Okay, this is James chapter 4, verse 7. And it reads, Submit yourselves therefore to Yahweh, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw nigh to Yahweh, and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Right? So, he was not in that spirit of actually drawing nigh to the Most High, right? He had severed, in the spirit, he actually had severed that connection, right? As he had transgressed, from one after the other, right? That connection between him and the Lord, was essentially lost. As a matter of fact, I have two precepts. One second. Let's get Isaiah. In regards to that disconnection, because he kept transgressing. And this is Isaiah chapter 59, verse 1, and it reads, Behold, the Lord Yahweh's hand is not shortened that it cannot save, neither his ears heavy, and it cannot hear. Verse 2, and here's the point. But your iniquities have separated between you and your power, and your sins have hid his face from you, that he will not hear. For your hands are defiled with blood, and your fingers with iniquity. Your lips have spoken lies, and your tongue hath muttered perverseness. Right. So this is the exact sentiment of what Saul was going through. Saul, he was just over and over and over again, right? Just transgressing. And what happens is, what happens when you're the type of person that just keeps transgressing, you just, the Lord just hides his face from you, right? Just like the Lord is hiding his face from 2/3 of our people, right? He doesn't want to hear them, because why? Because they're bathing in their iniquity, they're bathing in their sins, and they don't want to actually repent and hearken unto the voice of the Lord, via his prophets, right? I had another one, but I forgot that. Actually, I'll just keep reading a little bit, and then I'll end it off there. And verse 16, and it says, But Samuel replied, Why ask me, since the Lord has left you, and you become your enemy? The Lord has done just as he said he would. He hath torn your kingdom from you and give it to your rival David, right? And that's exactly what happened, right? The Lord, Yahweh Bashim Shai, eventually, Saul loses his life, and then, David eventually, he starts to reign in the second book of Samuel, right? Let's get Timothy. This is 1 Timothy 5, verse 17, and it reads, Let the elders that rule be counted worthy of double honor, especially they who labor in the word and doctrine, right? And when we open up this lesson, we always give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, and we also give all double honors to our elders, right, for the labor that they have put in. Our elders, the bishops, and this is just going to show the importance of elders, right? Because they have walked on similar paths that we as young men have walked on, right? So they can actually guide the sheep They can actually guide us in, not to refrain from certain things, and to encourage us to stay steadfast in the faith, right, and build us up stronger. And hopefully Yahweh the Lord would have mercy upon us, right? Verse 18, and it says, "For the scripture saith, Thou shalt not muzzle the ox that treadeth out the corn, and the laborer who is worthy of his reward," right? So, you know, 2/3 of our people, they want to actually muzzle the ox, right? That's treading out that corn, that's getting out that understanding, right? And that is what is going to give the elect the understanding and the stability throughout these times, right? Because you saw Saul's behavior. He was behaving very frantic in the midst of the army of the Philistines, right? And that is a sentiment that we don't want, right? So anyways, I'll end it off here, but Yahweh, this video was edifying, and as always, I just like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashim, Yahweh Shai, Bashim Rakan Kadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone for teaching us His truth. Until next time, I say Shalom.